Let's start by um, let's start by with the shape of our sailboat. So typically, I use pencil to outline any object or subject I'm going to be painting, but today I'm going to use marker, especially here while we warm up, um, just so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So to paint a sailboat or to draw a sailboat, let's start there. Very simple. We are going to see if I can move you over a little bit. So we're going to start with this line here, which is honestly, I don't sail. So I tried once when I lived in San Francisco for a summer and I was terrible at it. So I'm not really the best person to point out parts of a boat. But I know lines, and we're going to start with this line here. So this line here is a slight diagonal lift, and I'm going to move left to right. This is how big your boat is going to be, so just um, be mindful of that on your page. So you can go ahead and use pencil and just create a line on your page. Then I'm going to come down here and create this nice gentle curve. And at the back of the boat, this line here is such a little, it's much tinier because the boat, to show that it's kind of moving fast. So we have a tiny line there, vertical. Then I'll come in and with your pencil, you can lightly create some wave shapes. Now we'll do the sails. Actually, if you want to do a big sailboat that has a little cabin, we can put our cabin in. Again, at the front is going to be slightly taller than the back. Boop. Okay. Now I'm going to do 2 windows, classic, and we'll put the sail in. Okay. So little sail in front. For this one, I gave a little curve to it, and I encourage you to start doing that as well. You can always do your, just triangle. But to give it some movement and some motion, I like to put some wind in the sails. Okay. So that is a really simple way to to draw a sailboat. Um, Let me grab my. So now I'm going to go over to my page that I'll be working on today. And it's a good idea to have a little scratch piece of paper. If you don't have a scratch piece of paper yet, just grab a little sheet that you can test your value on, test your colors on. So now keeping this right here, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to practice drawing sailboats that I'll be able to decorate basically and paint some water underneath, all on my page. So I'll actually hold this portrait since that's what you guys can see best. And I'm going to put, let's say, 5 sailboats down my page. Do these as quick as possible for you. So notice how light I am, um, my pencil is. So it's going to be really tipping. This is like the way that I sail. Boat's basically tipped over. Maybe this one is going in the opposite direction. So just take some time and draw a few sailboats. You can use this simple template here. I do have a good eraser, um, but know that the decisions that you make with your pencil are definitely going to be different than what you make with your brush. So use this pencil outline more as a guide, just to give you a general idea of um, shapes and proportion, and then you can make your real choices with your pencil. I mean, sorry, with your paintbrush. So now that I have all these penciled in, super light, as you can see, I'm going to start by um, painting the boat part of it. So this bottom part here. And sailboats, I thought this would be perfect for like 4th of July coming up, summertime. Um, I want you to pick just a few colors. So we're going to limit our palette today. In these, I used mainly blue and red. And I used all different types of blue, and some reds are brighter than other reds that kind of almost go towards a brown. So I want you to get out your scratch sheet or, your practice sailboat sheet and pick 2 colors. I think I'm going to stick with mine, although this blue gets a little bit bright. So I am going to kind of cut it down. So let me bring my palette over here so you could see what I'm talking about. So this blue here is really vibrant. It's an ultramarine violet. And I want my blue to be a little bit more dull. So I'm going to come over here to this color that's a lot like burnt sienna, although this paint maker calls it something else. And I'm going to start to mix them. You can mix on your palette, of course, but I just want to show you here. Notice how that really dulls down this color. It goes from a really vibrant blue to more of a navy, kind of gray blue. You might want to use your colors from the pan and not have to mix that much. This is going to be my red, kind of an earthy terracotta red. And then when needed, I can always mix in my bright red. This is similar to a scarlet lake. But I know that some students love bright colors, so you might want to use yellow and pink for your sailboats, or something nice and bright and fun. I'm going to stick to these two, similar to what I've been working with already. All right, so we're going to paint the body of the boat, and you'll see that there's a few different kind of styles that you can do, a few different ways you can block out your paint for this body. This one is mostly blue, and then it has a nice white stripe. We're going to put in some sort of stripe to our boat, even if you leave it mostly white, and then just go in with one line. But what I want you to do as we paint through these boats is make each one slightly different. That's why we're keeping our color palette very tame. Maybe you have two colors, but like say you chose yellow and pink. The yellow can go from this bright yellow to maybe something a little more kind of buttery or warm. And maybe your pink kind of swings from this bright, bright pink. This is Opera Rose by Winsor and Newton, and kind of maybe goes back into a red, a bright red. Okay. So I'm going to open up to my main sheet and start to kind of put some color down on the body of these boats. And I'm just going to use my two colors. This one I'll do mainly and mostly blue. And I'm going to let this bottom line here, we're going to let it kind of be soft, so curvy. And this is where the boat meets the ocean. So we're going to have uh, we're going to have the water kind of curve up against the boat there. For value today, um, I'm not I'm not really worried too much about working light to dark, except when we get to the water. I'm gonna go at a pretty high value. So today I'm going to give you some options and you can kind of take that where you want to go. You can do what I'm doing, or you can decide to kind of veer off, just like this sailboat is doing, and pick some other ways. For this one, I'm just going to do 2 lines and I'll leave the rest of the boat white. For this one, I'll do a nice dark bottom and then I'll do a red line towards the top. So these boats aren't necessarily sitting on the ocean all together next to each other. Um, you may know that I paint a lot in pattern. So it's almost like a full page of sailboats, like you're looking at a fabric or pattern of sailboats. So they won't be on the same horizon line. Okay. So we're leaving white, we're kind of reserving some space, and we're letting the tools of the paper and the paint do the work for us. Now if you have the cabin, we can really practice doing a very thin line. So you can even take your practice sheet out or your scratch pad. And you can practice some thin lines, which means that you can't have too much water on your paintbrush. If you do, really only these thick, juicy lines come out, even if you touch lightly. So if you need, use that paper towel or rag. But you want enough paint that you don't have a dry brush effect. So I'm not seeing any white of the paper come through. I'm holding my paintbrush very lightly. Also, if you don't have enough water, you kind of won't see your line. There we go. This is a size 4 brush, so it already is very small. And then I'm also anchoring my pinky and my hand on the page and just gently touching the paper to create these nice thin lines. So this is what we're going to outline our cabin line, pencil line with. So in this one here, this boat is going in this direction to the left. And I have a very light pencil line, and I'm just going to follow over it. So we know once we cover pencil with watercolor, whether that's a wash or a line, we can't erase it. So this is a nice dark value. For this top line, you can go a little bit heavier. I'm applying a little more pressure. This is all just practicing brush control, and it really does just take practice and muscle memory. And then, and I'm going to put a red line right at the top of this boat so that we can actually see where it ends. since it kind of just blends right into the white of the page. Perfect. So we're practicing our thin, thin lines, anchoring your hand on your paper. Very delicate touch to the page. And as you do this, remind yourself to soften your shoulders, your jaw, your eyebrows. Tomorrow, we'll really work on loosening up the body while we paint, but it's always good to bring yourself back to that. For this one, I think I'm going to give the cabin a little bit of color with a very light value. So you can try that as well. So that is a very light value. It's almost starting to bleed a little bit too much. So I'm going to dry my brush off on my napkin or rag and lift some of this excess water. Get you out of that shadow. Okay. And now we'll just go through and do the mast. So your mast can be either one of your colors. You can, I might stick with blue for most of them. And for this one, we're going to start, I like to start at the top and draw my brush down. And as I move down, my line gets thicker. Just one clean line, top to bottom. Now this one is turning. Really needs to go the opposite direction, it looks like, from where they were going. And we will I'm going to give a little bit of floor to this boat. So we know where it is. There we go. My little 4th of July sailboats. So to make a really straight or even line that doesn't have too many wiggles and wobbles, although we do love that as well. I really use the page to anchor my wrist. So I point, you can, if you're moving, sorry, let me get my words. If you're not traveling very far, you can just rest your wrist on the page and create a really thin line, really just from like your fingers and your hand moving left to right. So you can try that on your practice sheet, anchoring your wrist down and your brushes pretty much vertical, maybe slightly tilted. and you're kind of just rotating from the wrist, creating that thin line. But when I'm making a mast and I need to move really far and I'm moving vertically. You can always turn your page if it's easier to go left to right or right to left. But going up top to bottom, I tend to tilt the handle of my brush towards me. The bristles are pointing away from me, and that allows me to bring my point to the page, and it creates this nice point at the top, this nice end to my line or beginning. And then I'm just dragging my hand down. So my wrist is slightly resting on the paper, and I am dragging my hand down. And as long as I can drag my hand pretty much straight, it will create a nice straight line. So you can practice that on your practice sheet. Another little tip is maybe you take your pinky out a little bit, and it kind of creates this second anchor point. So your pinky is down, and then your wrist is down, point of the brush is down, and drag. So a lot of brush control today. Hey, last thing before we do our sales, I want to put in some flags at the top. If you want to skip this step, you can skip it. But you see how I have these flags up here? It's just another cute little detail to put in. You are welcome to pencil outline first if you'd like to, but I'm going to go ahead and just put this flag in and let it kind of wiggle. One way to do that, I'll just show you with the marker so you can see it. If you haven't done it before, you really just take a line, say the flag is going in this direction because the boat is going to the right. So for this flag, you'd have a vertical line. That's the width of your flag. And then we'll move across, down, and across. Okay. Then you take almost the same line across, down, and across. But this time we need them to meet. And that will look like a flag kind of waving in the wind. But with watercolor, you don't have to get that kind of detailed with it. We can just do a sweet little squiggle that gets thinner as it moves away from the boat. Okay. I really cannot stand this cabin. So I am going to just cover it all in blue. Just fill it in. Now we just have the sails left, but I want to show you the first step of the water before we paint the sails. I'm going to dry and clean off my brush. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water underneath each of these sailboats so they're not just like floating in space. To do that, I will grab some cerulean blue. So, like a light, bright blue is what it looks like. This is it wet. You'll see it underneath here dry. So we're almost going to do just like our first wash layer, and then we'll come on top of it and do some line work to make it look more like water or even like ocean. So at the beginning, you just need to load your brush up with some blue, cerulean blue, and I'll start right at the top. I'm just going to go right underneath the boat, but we don't just want it like sitting right on top of a single line of water. We want that boat to be in the water. So we have to put just a little bit of blue kind of up towards the this top line of the boat. So our water is going to come here and then around the front. So our boat is now sitting in water instead of just sitting on one horizon line. Okay. So this is a pretty light value, 30% paint and 70% water is a really good sweet spot to use if you're ever unsure. For this one, I'll put some water all around. Oh, I wanted to talk about this paper that I really like. It's not the highest quality, but it's great for just getting some things on the page. And it comes in a really thick pad. It's from Jerry's. I don't even know what brand it is. It might be the Jerry's brand. I can link it below, I'm pretty sure. If not, I'll link it in tomorrow's post. But it's been really great, and I've used it almost every day. So I'm using brush strokes that go left and right, mimicking the flow of water. Last one. Be mindful if your boat is still wet, probably should be dry. That's why we did our boat first and then took some time before doing our water, laying out our steps. Um, but if your boat is wet, mm, it will bleed when you kind of move up towards it. So just keep that in mind as you're going. So showing you how I work around the page. I love working on many different things at once or many different areas at once and not staying in one spot too long. Just helps with drying time. So we'll come back to that and do some line work like we do here. Um, but now is our time to kind of decorate our sails. You're welcome to keep them pretty minimal if you'd like. Um, but it might be nice to or fun to do some patterns on them. So we can do some thin lines. These are just some ideas, big shapes, chunky stripes, dots, or grids. We have our examples here. This is the thin lines and the grid here. Or we have just a fill and some chunky lines here. This is really your time to kind of play and experiment. And it's kind of hard to go wrong, especially if you are just sticking with the same colors. It's kind of hard to go wrong. And, maybe you have one that you end up not really liking that much, and that's okay because we have 4 other ones that we can practice and play with. So yours can be as intricate or as simple as you'd like. I'm going to keep mine pretty simple just for time. But one trick that I want to talk about is say you have a grid or you have some lines, stripes. Um, you want to have those vertical lines of the stripe curve like it's on a sail with some wind in it. So it's not going to be straight and flat. Um, it's going to have some bend to it. Same with these thin lines and this grid. Think about how your sail is moving or if it's billowing in one way and see if you can just kind of um, mimic that with your line. And if you don't get it right, it probably will still look fine. It's just loosening it up a little bit and not making it so rigid. And these are cute little 4th of July sailboats, so they don't need to be, you know, perfection. For this one, I'm just going to do some, you know what, this one, maybe I'll just fill it in. So I am just going to do 2 um, sails here. Just in an effort to keep this not too long. Mm. Now, I would say that's a little too much water for me today, so I'm going to dry my brush and lift it since I want my line to be a little more precise. Right. So just being mindful of how you hold the brush in your hand and how you're holding your body as you paint. Okay. I'll show you demo here the water, how to finish it up, and you can continue to paint for as long as you have. Um, but we're already at 45 minutes, so let me demo how to finish this water. I'm going to be doing it in this similar way, which I think goes to the style of the entire sailboat. So I have my wash down first, which we did already, and then I'm going to move to some line work. So I'll take a darker value of blue and I'm going to create some horizontal lines. So I'll move from left to right. That's a little too wiggly, a little too wobbly. Instead, I'm just going to do just really gentle curves in many different line weights. And I want those curves to alternate. So where they break, which is here, 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 has to be a little bit random. So where you pick your brush up and um, there's some space. We want that to be have a lot of variation to it, something like that. So going back in, I'll take resting my wrist on the page. I'm going to work left to right and just create these little thin lines. Guess it depends on how choppy you want your water. And then I'll go back in with some of that same light blue that we used for the wash. Put in just some variation of color as well as value. Now I'm going in with a darker value and it's starting to bleed a little bit, and that's a beautiful thing for water. I'll let my value get lighter as I go down so it kind of fades into this white space in between each sailboat. Okay, so I'm going to leave you to it, to decorating your sails, and we'll see what you come up with. We have some ideas here, some examples here, but give it a go, whether you painted along with me or watched and then we'll paint later. I hope this was helpful and got you into your body a little bit more and into your paints, or working with your paints. Um, but working in this way, almost following my lead and not having too much of a plan and just kind of going with it and covering that blank sheet of paper is a great way to work with intuition, which is our theme for this week. And hopefully you've been, um, noticing a lot more since we started. But we'll have one more day. Tomorrow will be a dance party. So be ready. Have your coffee. And I'll see you then. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.